integrity, as defined, means whole, not split.
What you do and what you say consistently is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
The path to integrity is you have to know what you believe first.
Yeah.
Because then once you know what you believe, now how do I live out what I believe in my everyday?
Hello, everybody. I am here again with Crystal Hollenbeck. Crystal, your last episode was, I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure it was, I think Jake recently just passed you by, that darn stinker, but maybe you'll take first place with this episode. But your last episode was so popular. And then it's funny, your name's come up over and over again. Every time I ask other CSATs, hey, is there somebody I should have on the show? They're like, oh, have you had Crystal on? I said, yes, I've already had her on. So anyways, here we are for a second time. And we're going to be talking about, integrity, and then also the effects of violating that on the partner, and some of the things that because sometimes I think we separate our recovery from our relational recovery, and I think that as much as you can integrate the two, the better. And I think focusing on an integrity-based healing model, I think, allows you to integrate your recovery and your relational recovery. So before we get into that, Crystal, can you define your definition of integrity as it applies to somebody in sex addiction recovery?
Mm-hmm. I think integrity is two things. I think it is identifying your sense of self. Really, so many people that are not coping with life well, they were never really given a strong sense of self during their developmental years. And so I think we have to identify who we are. We are uniquely, divinely created by God. There's only one of us. But don't we spend our life trying to be like somebody else, really embracing who you are. And then secondly, what you do and what you say consistently is integrity. So, Roland, we were talking about integrity, and you have such a passion for this, for men. And I just, think it's so great because that piece doesn't always get honed in on, right? There's so many of the behaviors and other things that it is the center of attention when we're helping somebody heal. But really that integrity piece, the way it affects the partner too, is the partner really usually admires I'll just use a woman, husband, although we see women also that are betrayers. But for the sake of our conversation, they really admire their husband. They're usually successful and kind, and people look up to them, and they have standings in community. They're usually strong men of faith, and they really look up to them, and they think that I'm married to this person, or I'm in this relationship with this person of high integrity. It's one of the main characteristics that attract them. And so then when you're all of a sudden you're devastated to find out, what? You've been lying and deceiving and cheating and all of that. It's devastating. Mm-hmm. But that integrity piece is one of the most significant parts of the betrayal.
Mm-hmm. So I want to speak to something that I didn't anticipate speaking to, but I think this is a great opportunity because I want your feedback on it. So as somebody who I was raised in a highly, very strict kind of religious household, that drove me to become I don't know if I ever really became an atheist. I think I really wanted to be an atheist. I don't know if I ever achieved that or not, but I want to speak to that though, real quick, with integrity for all the guys listening, because I know there's a good amount of the guys who listen to my podcast who faith, religion is something that's very off-putting to them. Maybe they had similar kind of religious woundings to me. So, but I want to speak to those guys for a second too. Listen, God is just a word. You guys can decide whatever you believe created this place, whatever you believe is inside of us that compels us every day. Even if you want to go with the more of a kind of like evolution standpoint, that's okay. I mean, there's a, to me, I don't know what's going on here. I think atheist is the wrong word to describe me, because I definitely feel compelled inside. It's always interesting to me every day when I wake up and I'm compelled to be of service. I'm compelled to do something hard. I'm compelled to, rather than do something fun, a lot of times I do something hard. I do something hard because I'm trying to, and I call that God. So I just want everybody in the listening to this, it doesn't have, as we're going to talk about integrity and sense of self, this conversation is probably going to sound a little bit more higher powery maybe than other conversations, but I just want to let every listener know, I do not have a particular religious affiliation. And so please don't be put off by this conversation. I think I personally I believe you can be a man of integrity and deeply tapped into your sense of self and what makes you you, and you being kind of undecided of what the creator is, who it is, why it is. Crystal and I are not trying to tell you how or what to believe here, but I do want to speak to that, Crystal, and I want you to respond. I do believe part of integrity, Jake Porter has this model, and one of the slivers of the model is spiritual. It doesn't say religious, it just says a spiritual. I do want to speak to this real quick, because I do think it's tough to tap into the kind of visceral integrity without some sort of, I don't even want to call it spiritual, Crystal, but without some sort of like rhyme or reason, meaning, purpose to any of this. I think without any of that, gosh, I don't know. It feels like it would be hard to be in integrity if you think that there's truly no reason for our existence. Can you just speak to the element of spirituality real quick before we dive into this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're discussing this, because I have a Christian worldview. You have an atheistic worldview. So many people come from so many different faiths, beliefs, practices, upbringings. But here's how I approach it. I respect what every single human being believes. And so here's how I address the integrity from a spiritual perspective. Because I believe we all know we're not our bodies, right? We are this person inside this body who changes as you age, which I'm experiencing. So we know there's this separate, some people refer to it as a soul or a spirit or who you are, but there's an acknowledgement of that. And what I do with clients is I say, let's talk about integrity. And part of that is the lens of what do you believe? So I ask them, what do you believe? Right? Maybe you don't believe that there is a God. That's okay. But what do you believe about the human being? What do you believe about death? What do you believe about values? What do you believe about purpose in life? What do you believe about, so when I look at it through the integrity lens, right? I may have a Christian worldview, but my clients are very diverse. So I help them to say, here's what my beliefs give to me for integrity. Let's talk about what your beliefs bring to you. And what I find, Roland, is people appreciate that. Most people have never really sat down and laid out, what do I believe? Right? What are my values? They kind of know they want to do the right thing and be a good person and that sort of thing. But to really take the time to sit down and say, what do I believe? Because that's the path to integrity. The path to integrity is you have to know what you believe first. Because then once you know what you believe, now how do I live out what I believe in my everyday? And that's why I've created an intentional living plan, because I get you focused on integrity. If you're living your best life, being your best self, what does that look like specifically? And so that's where I get the focus to be. But you're right. That spiritual part, I do believe, is an important part of who we are, but it can be whatever you believe it to be. Because, just like with my faith, I believe it, right? You believe something different, but we all have to believe. We have to identify what we do believe.
Yeah, I love how you said it there. I wrote this down before I asked this question. You said, I can't remember if it was before we started recording or not, but you wrote how basically a sense of self is a precursor to having integrity. And I so agree with it, right? Think about it, right? Integrity, a lot of people think integrity means honesty. Those are two different words. Integrity, as defined, means whole, not split, right? So if a bridge has integrity, it's safe to drive over. If a glass has integrity, you can pour a liquid into it without it leaking because it has integrity, right? So it's this whole, it's one thing all the time. And that was when I realized, because at first, it was tough. It was a hard pill to swallow, Crystal, when I started hearing this idea that I might not be a man of integrity, right? That was, I got to be honest, my first response to that was, screw you. I'm not listening to this anymore. I'm not, it was, Now, in hindsight, I should have looked into that resistance. Why, if I was a man of integrity, why did I feel the need to be so defensive and offended? So, anyways, that should be a hint for everybody listening. When someone attacks your integrity and it hurts you, you should look into that a little bit. I think because people of integrity, I don't know if they would be offended or hurt or feel the need to defend themselves. So, anyways, that little hint there. But as I started exploring it, because one thing that recovery helped me with, Crystal, was being open to being wrong. And why was I open to being wrong? Well, I just did a bunch of things to my wife that I never thought I would and never wanted to. So clearly I should be open to being wrong, because I literally just for decades have been defying my own integrity and lying to the people who I love most. Right. So that's got me open to being wrong. And that was where I was like, okay, maybe I don't have integrity. What is that? And I loved how you said, a sense of self being a precursor to integrity. If you don't know what you are and why we're here, can you even be in integrity? Or are you just kind of going in day by day? And that's why I like to speak to the spiritual piece is, again, we're not asking you to believe in a particular religion. That's not what Crystal and I are saying. We're just saying, here's the way I always look at it, Crystal, is where I've actually started studying the Bible and reading the Bible more is what I've started to look at is that these world's religions, these people are using a practice to tap into their sense of self. And so to me, I think we can become open and look at all the practices and see what is it that they're getting out of it. And again, if you don't like that angle, choose a different angle. But the reason I'm kind of spending so much time on this, Crystal, is I've asked so many CSATs of the people who go the distance in recovery, of the couples who come out of this and actually thrive. I have asked so many people what the commonality is. And some of my more atheistic people listening to this are not going to like this. But you know what I hear? The stronger they are in their faith. Now, again, faith does not mean Christian faith. Faith does not mean it's just strong in their faith. So for the more atheistic listeners, strong in your sense of self, strong in what you think is going on here, strong in what you think makes humans wake up in the morning and do altruistic things. Like just believe in something, for crying out loud. Like you got to believe in something more than just waking up, making money and spending money. You got to have something that you believe, or I don't think you can be in integrity. Anyways, sorry to go on and on and on there. I didn't expect us to go that route, but as I've reflected on this, that comment always kind of bothered me, because I was like, okay, well, if that's such a great thing for recovery and relational recovery, what does that mean for me then? What am I going to tap into? Anything you have to say on that before we jump to the next topic?
I do. I think the question that I ask most often is, tell me why you're living a life that goes against your integrity. Yeah. Why are you living this secret life that brings shame to you? Why are you doing this? And, I really believe that all of us grow up and we are either embracing the way we were raised or we are trying to run away from it. Yeah. And I think we have some trauma work to do usually, where we have to just take a look at, and you and I both have experienced this. We have to take a look at the way we were raised. And at some point, we have to take a look at, what do I believe? Mm-hmm. What's the right thing for me? How am I going to choose to live my life? And that takes some time to undo and to figure out even, because you grow up and you come into adulthood and all of a sudden you have college and bills and you get a mortgage and you have a family and you just start living life with businesses and community. And who has time to really sit and say, wait a minute, who am I? Right. Let me take time to really chart out my purpose in life. And I believe we have multiple purposes, but the overall purpose is, how do we identify what we believe, what our values are? And then regardless of where life takes us, we can live by our values. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such an important part. You're right. Not trying to shame you because you've not been living in integrity, but it's common sense that you've had poor integrity, right? And the partners need that validated, right? It's not like, oh, he's an addict, so, this poor guy is an addict. They're over here flaming angry. Like, I don't care what you are. You did this. You lied to me. You deceived me. You betrayed me. You lived the double life. You spent this money. You put me at risk. right? And so we do have to address that integrity piece.
I love what you just said there. Like I hope all the audience heard it. Like, when Crystal was speaking on the betrayed partner's behalf, I don't care what you are. I don't care. Like, you lied. You like you're a sex addict. You're not a sex addict. You're a porn addict. You just had one affair. Like, whatever the heck you want to call yourself. You lied to me and did something you don't want to do, and I don't want you to do. And I think I just love the way you framed that. I've been smiling a lot for the people listening to this and they can't see the video. For those of you who have read my book, I know I've sent a few copies to you, Crystal, but I don't call my recovery chapter recovery. I call it intentional living, because I think recovery can sometimes be a little bit of a distracting word, because I think when we think about an addiction and recovery, I think our mind goes to sobriety. I think our mind goes to going to a rehab facility and detoxing and coming out 4 weeks later and having this problem out of your life. And I think, I think with sex addiction or compulsive sexual behavior, I think thinking of it as recovery, I'm going to get this out of my life and then move on, I think is I think that's why we see a high level of relapse. That's not really the solution, though. The solution is exactly, I wrote down a list of all these, I like the question I wrote down was, why are you doing something shameful and hiding it? Right? Like, regardless of where you stand with any of this, what is the answer to that question? Because that's really what we're talking about here is you must believe something about yourself, the world, women, your purpose. Like there must be some sort of mumble jumble in your brain that would allow behaviors like this to happen and to hide it from others, right? So, regardless of where you are in recovery, getting curious about what must I believe for these behaviors to occur. And that's why I loved when you said intentional living, because that's what I believe. I believe is anybody living intentionally doesn't do stuff like this, right? Does that make sense?
You're so right. It's the best part of your book that I love. And your book is great. I've had it really resonate with men that I see. And they tell me this is the first thing that I really resonated with, the high achievers that I see. And I do not call my recovery plan. I call it intentional living plan. Mm-hmm. So when I came to that chapter in your book, I'm like, yes, we Perfect. Are in such alignment with that, because you're right. I try to teach people, start your day with intention and end it with reflection. And if you will do that, most likely you're going to stay on the path where you're loving yourself and valuing yourself first. And if you value and love yourself first, I don't have to worry about you hurting your wife. Mm-hmm. And so it's that self-love. It's understanding mm-hmm. who I am. I feel like the betrayer and the betrayed, they both are asking the same question, mm-hmm. right? The betrayer is asking himself or herself, how could I have done this? Right? When they start to get their mind right, they're like, how could I have done this? And of course, the betrayed partner is like, how could you? Mm-hmm. Right? And so it's figuring that out, that obviously you're not loving yourself well. And I think that's the core of integrity, is we have to learn how to treat ourselves well. We have to learn how to get that feel good in a positive way instead of a negative way. And it really does come from a skewed sense of self. Mm-hmm. Right. And again, that comes out of a lot of times childhood and your experiences and what was taught to you and how you were treated and all of these things combined. But yes, intentional living is the words that I love to use too.
Well, and I want to show, because I think one of the things that I notice about high achieving men, I can speak to this because I did this same nonsense in my life. I would hear you therapists talking about all this, and I would say, oh yeah, that for the people who need that, that and that I would hear this, and here's why. And here, I just want to speak to this, Crystal, because I think there's this problem amongst high achieving men where, because we have achieved the thing that most men are trying to achieve, and we've already achieved it, there is this, that sense of self thing. Yeah, I really hope those guys find it. Right. There's this like, I hear you, Crystal, but yeah, that applies to every, I don't know if you've seen my house or the car I just drove up to, but yeah, I've got a great sense of self. So you can go give that to somebody else who needs it. high achieving men latch onto an identity that is strategically, I have this as one of my notes here because I wanted you to speak to this because I know you work with a lot of high achieving men. Status. A lot of people think status is wealth. Status is just a thing you achieve in life. It's an identity, a social placement that you have. And we choose, I just read this neat book that defined it really well. We choose a status that we believe secures the highest likelihood of meeting our needs. And so for high achieving men, I find that a lot of them have a desire to be influential. A lot of them want to lead. They want to change something. And I think that's baked into their DNA. They have this call to do this. And I think they gravitate towards a status that increases the likelihood of them being able to have those leadership opportunities, those influential opportunities, to have the eyes on them, to command the room. And so I think they pick up on this as a boy. If you talk to a lot of my teachers will tell you that they knew that I was going to become this monster that I became because they could just see it like, oh, wow, this kid is, he's cooking a recipe for attention, getting all eyes on him and leading a group. Right. So I just wanted to speak to that though, because I wanted you to respond. So then we obtain this status. Our society, the world says, wow, look at this guy's sense of self. It's perfect. He's confident. He's well-spoken. Look at his suit. Look at his wristwatch. He's got this thing. And so I was under the delusion, Crystal, that my sense of self was just fine because everyone I met wanted my sense of self. For the listeners here, I'm quoting sense of self because what I just described is not my sense of self. I would recover myself. That's why they call it recovery. But anyways, I just want to speak to that. When you, as a therapist, how do you deal with that with people like me who walk in and it's like, oh yeah, all that stuff, Crystal. Yeah, that applies to everyone but me. My sense of self is just fine. I've got shelves and shelves of trophies and awards, and I can pick up my phone and call this celebrity and this person. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with my sense of self. How do you combat that? Because if somebody doesn't see anything wrong with their identity because it appears to be working in the United States of America, what do we do what if they don't want to change it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so complex. Mm-hmm. High achievers, there are so many aspects to their life, to their person. They're not allowed to not be okay. They're the people that fix everything. They're the people that take care of everything, buy everything, support. I can't tell you how many I see that support their entire family. They're always finding the jobs for everybody, taking care of everybody.
Extended families,
Yes. So they're never allowed to not be okay. Mm-hmm. So when they have a day that they're not, or something's going on with them not, they don't have anywhere to turn usually. Even their colleagues I see, they're not going to go tell them because there's even this little bit of competition, and so I think that's one of the harmful aspects of high achievers is, they always have to be the one that's okay, taking care of everybody. And so when they come into me, of course, I've never had one come in on their own that just woke up one day and said, I'm going to go to therapy and get help for this ever. Usually it's because it's something has been revealed about them and they're forced to enter therapy. But when they come in and we get through that initial, it's difficult because they lived an unaccountable life. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden I'm asking them to be accountable. And they see it as restriction instead of protection.
Yeah. And I just want to, what Crystal's meaning there for everybody listening is, it's so true. Amongst successful male culture, a lot of the reason we want money and success is so that we don't have to comply with the rules, right? It's like, oh, once you have money, I have time freedom. I have location freedom. I report to no one but myself. And so I just wanted to stop real quick. That's what Crystal was talking about, because a lot of guys would hear that and say, oh, I'm not entitled. I'm accountable. I have tons of accountability. Yes. And just let's not kid ourselves. The whole reason we want to become of that status is because we have less restrictions, less rules, less people to report to. Like, come on, guys. What she's saying is right. We progressively live in this life where soon I'm reporting to no one but myself, and I control my time. I control what I buy, when I buy it. The goal of getting successful is to want for nothing. So I just wanted to to show what she's saying. Guys, come on, like whether you feel like that doesn't apply to you, it does. It's the whole concept of success, at least in American capitalism, right? It's I obtain this and then now I don't have to be accountable. I don't have to watch what I spend. I don't have to tell anyone I don't report to anyone but myself. So anyways, I just wanted everybody to hear that mentality is what Crystal's talking about. And it's a dangerous mentality.
Thank you so much for explaining that. You're exactly right. And also, we have to realize that high achievers are very generous people. They really are. And so, you've got all of these aspects that make it complex, the position that they get into, but they are very generous. But again, there's just not many people there for them, which is one of the reasons why I think your group is so phenomenal, because it allows them to be with people that are like-minded with similar life experiences and personalities, and they can really have a place to talk and be themselves and not have to be perfect. And so, it's all complex. And that comes back to what we were talking about with integrity. They come in and they're very high achievers, but when they take a breath and they start to just have a place that's safe to start to really talk about vulnerability and who am I, and be honest about what they're going through, what they've experienced, what their fears are, how they've been harmed. Oftentimes, therapy is the first time that a high achiever will share something that happened to them, because it's so humiliating and they are this big achiever. So nobody thinks anything is, like they've had the perfect life or something. But yeah, they really just need that vulnerability to just say, okay, when you come into therapy, you're not here to help me, right? So you get to relax and not have to carry that responsibility of anything. So that's a beginning of really developing and taking a look at your sense of self.
But I always tell people, like, I can't remember who it was. I think it was the guy, I can't remember his name, but he's from the show The Prophet, but he adopted guy. And he said, I can't remember, I think it was a made up stat, but I agree with it. I think it's an accurate statistic, even if it is made up. He said 99% of highly successful men are just screwed up beyond belief. And we adapted to make sure that no one would bully us again. We adapted to make sure that our mom and dad would be impressed, and the teachers would stop thinking that we were a failure. We adapt to become the person that doesn't get treated, looked at and said the way that we don't want to. And so, I say that, Crystal, just to say it's okay to talk about how screwed up you are, because to me, it really speaks to all of your most beautiful traits. My most pronounced beautiful things that I do are the opposites, Crystal, of the very thing that I am the most ashamed of. It's caused me to do the extreme in the opposite direction. So the reason I bring that up is make friends with that, because I believe the more you understand both poles, the healthier you can use the strength. I think if you try to just lean into the strength and ignore what caused you to go so far in that opposite direction, I feel like it holds you back. So for the entrepreneurs and high achievers listening, not just in recovery, but just in being a better human being in the world, understanding both of your poles, the dark part that caused you to adapt. I think making friends with both is the way to do it healthy. I think ignoring the shadowy pieces of the success makes it a bit dangerous, because now there's this invincibility kind of, you don't remember why it's there. And so when you don't know why it's there, you don't know how to apply it. And so you end up kind of applying it incorrectly. And some of that can be impressing women, using it to flirt with women, right? Whereas if I understand, I do this because I felt this way, it makes me honor women more, because I don't want to I want to be impressive, but I don't want to use women to feel impressive. Does that make sense? And so, but that only came from understanding the dark side of my ability to be impressive. Was I started honing in, okay, I still want to be impressive and I'm really good at it, but I don't want to use other humans, especially in ways that would violate my relationship with my wife. Right. I want to transition into your pieces from the book. So as we're having this conversation, so Crystal wrote a book. I'll have her explain what it is and where to find it. One of my our shared clients found it extremely useful. So for those listening, and he's a very bright individual, so it must be a good book. I have not read it yet, so maybe you can get me a copy as well, so I can take care of it. So Crystal, as we talk about betrayal, trauma recovery, and integrity, because I don't think that these guys need to see the entities as entirely separate. I think the healing the marriage and becoming more tapped into your integrity and living it out intentionally, I think they're kind of similar. Can you talk to us about how there's threads of this through your book and how maybe the two things can be, you can use your violation of your integrity as an asset to help your partner heal? Talk to us about your 7 points and how you organized it.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to just speak to what you were just saying there. When you find your worth and achievement, I believe that you're wounded.
Yeah.
So whatever the reason is driving that, but you're wounded. So if we take a look at then what you do to your partner is wounded. Mm-hmm. Your partner is traumatized by discovery. Your partner has complex anger. They have broken relational attachment, whether it's psychological because we're staying together or whether it's physical because we're ending the relationship. And that there's such significant loss and grief that goes on. So you're a wounded person when you're betraying. You're abusing your partner, you're deceiving them, you have power and control. And we know that that's the basis of it, is that power and control. And so when you're doing that, you're wounding them. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, discovery wounds them. And so my book is called Betrayal Trauma Anger. You're not crazy, you're angry, and you should be. How to process complex anger while healing from the impact of sexual betrayal. And what I've done is I did a survey in 2023 with betrayed partners, and it was a betrayal trauma anger survey. And the book is full of those comments and data from the survey. And then I also developed a 7-phase model of I call it the BTA calming model. So I use the acrostic calming to walk through. Over the years, I was watching partners, and it seemed that their anger would show up in different phases. And so I created this model that walks through. And the book is also helpful for if you're a helping professional. Mm-hmm. It's excellent for you to have a tool to help your partners. And it's also for the betrayer. I have lots of information, tools, and skills and recommendations for the betrayer at the end of every chapter. So the main thing about integrity that I try to get across, and I've had so many partners tell me in reading the book that they're grateful the way that I address the betrayer, that I really validate for them. They didn't wake up one day and want to do these terrible things to you. You can do that double thinking where you have to hold those two contradictory ideas at one time in your mind. Okay, he does love me and he betrayed me, right? They don't seem to go together, right? And of course, he certainly isn't showing when he's doing that. But the integrity piece of it is we have to get to the bottom of understanding people who betray and live a double life. They are wounded. They need healing. And the people that they've betrayed also need healing because you wound them by what you do. So we have this dynamic after discovery, Roland, as you know, where we've got he's traumatized. And again, I'm using he, she, it could be he or she. But he's traumatized by being discovered, and she's traumatized by discovering. So we have two traumatized people, and it's just a horrible place to be when you're in that initial crisis.
You said something that was really brilliant. I have one of the most common criticisms, pieces of feedback, what partners will say is, how could you ever have loved me if you did this, right? And you said something that I thought was so great, right? Like, as a Christian, you will do things that are not in alignment with your Christian faith. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that make you not a Christian?
No.
Right. And so I think as I was hearing you, it's like, oh, it's so true, right? We throw all this out And you're so correct. There are so many examples in life where we believe one thing way more, than this other thing. We truly, these men, because my groups, 40% of this country are identified as Christians. And in my group, I would say 40 to 50% identify as Christians, right? And yet here we are holding a strong faith, but then acting on this little thing that we don't even believe in that totally violates the principle of our faith but that's a prime example of holding two things at the same time, even though you really believe one, yet the other one's polluting, and you would never stop and say, oh, I'm not a Christian because I did that. No, that's not what it is, because there's grace involved. And I think, Crystal, that's the hardest thing, though, is what we're asking these women to have grace when socioculturally this has been spoken about as the unforgivable. Once a cheater, always a cheater. This is the thing you don't forgive. And then here we are, we're asking these ladies to explore the idea of maybe having some grace and seeing if there's a way to move forward. Do you speak about this in the book? Because that's a big ask.
I do. I certainly do. And, I think that's an excellent example you gave about being a Christian in sin. And, probably the greatest Christian that ever lived was Paul. And he says, I find myself doing what I shouldn't and not doing what I should. Right. And so it's that struggle. But most people, so when I did my survey, 85.5% were staying in the marriage. Mm-hmm. Most people that I see want to stay. And the reason is, it's complex. Most people, though, say, oh, I told him if you ever cheat, I'm out. Oh, I judge my girlfriends because they stayed. I feel like I'm betraying myself by staying with him. But what they realize when it happens is it's so much more complex, because he does have all these beautiful characteristics. You've built a life with him. He may be the father of your children. So you're confused. You're trying to reconcile, how can this wonderful person I love hurt me the most? Mm-hmm. And so what I think is important is I educate them to say, he's wounded. He's got to do the work to heal. But if you're not ready to leave, so if you come to me and you're like, I'm out, I'm done, then I walk you through that. But if you're not ready to leave and you're not sure, I always recommend commit to a year. That way you don't have to vacillate back and forth. Should I stay? Should I leave? Oh, this day I want to leave. This day I want to stay. Obviously, if he continues to betray you, then we have another conversation. But give him the opportunity to get help, and give yourself the opportunity to heal from this trauma. So as they get educated, and my book is full of explaining and educating and tools. And what you want to do is you want to get educated on it, that he really does have a problem. Give him the opportunity to get healing himself, to become a man of integrity in these areas where he's shown poor integrity, and then see how you feel. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of couples go on, like yourself, you and your wife have gone on to have a really strong relationship. I'm 22 years out. I've been married 37 years. And, a lot of people will be glad that they stayed. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can do statistics on that, mm-hmm. because trying to regulate what's successful and what's not, just because you stay doesn't mean it's a good marriage. And mm-hmm. But you're right. I think most people want to stay, and it's devastating, but that understanding that that person is wounded. And it's so hard. I talk about this in the book. As therapists and coaches, we have a challenge, because when a betrayed partner comes into you, and we're trying to tell them about anger and dealing with that anger, how do you tell somebody who's devastated your life, who's harmed you, who you feel like you don't even know now? How do you say you can't really retaliate with revenge, right? Everything in you just wants to, go for the jugular.
Justice. Yeah, justice.
No, 95% of my survey respondents said that betrayal is injustice. And anger is my answer to injustice. And so, understanding that. But when you come out of that crisis phase, so my calming model starts with the crisis. In the crisis, it's just all out of control. Everybody's traumatized. It's really, you feel like you're crazy. And then you move into the awareness phase, where now your anger gets intense because now you're really learning everything. You get the disclosure, you get all the information. It's humiliating. There's so many things you have to go through. And both of you, I do think it's a journey for both of you in healing. And then we move into the leveling stage where it starts to level out. You can, start to use some skills. And then we move into the management phase, which is where we do the deeper trauma work and the deeper anger work. We really take a look at those two things. And then you move into the intuition phase, right? Most partners who have been betrayed, Roland, as you know, they lose their sense of self, right? They question, how could I have not known this? Like, why would I marry something? So there's all of that.
Well, and who must I be if my husband wants to do this to me, right? If I was just better, less flawed, prettier, better in bed, whatever it was, then this wouldn't have happened, right? So it's this loss of self, but also this, almost hatred of self as what's wrong with me? If I was just better, I could have avoided this, right? Which is just so freaking sad, because I've never talked to a guy who told me he did these things because of his wife's inadequacies. I've never heard that before. But as you look at these betrayed partners, that is their go-to assumption. If I was just better looking, better in bed, better wife, whatever, then he wouldn't have done this to me. And it's just so sad that they take it so personally, because it was everything but personal, right?
It's so true. It has nothing to do with them, but you can't help to take it personal.
Yeah.
You're right. You can't help to say, what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? And then you learn you're good enough. This was his issue. But that takes time to do that. So that's that intuition phase. And then you move into the normalization phase. And this is where you're in your new normal, whether you have ended the relationship or you stayed together, and you're able to manage your anger. You've had trauma healing, and you're really settling into a new relationship, a new normal. But that's when some residual anger comes up and resentment has to be dealt with, right? So everything's settled down, and then you're like, oh, that starts to come up, like, your life is really good. And, look what you've done. So, and then of course we move into the grief stage, which is the final stage. And I believe that you start grieving from the moment that discovery happens for both of you. And, even though this sounds horrible, it's true. The person who's betraying, they're going to miss what they were doing. It was an unhealthy way of coping with life, but they're also having loss of their reputation, having to look at their wife and she looks at you through a different lens, right? So there's loss for both of you. And I don't believe that we ever stop grieving. I do believe we learn to live life experienced grief. And then we go on, of course, to post-traumatic growth, which is all the good that comes from the bad. And I know that's depending on where you are in your journey. Sometimes you're going to be like, don't say that to me. I don't want to hear that. But you will get to the place that you will see the good that comes from the bad.
Yeah, let's end with two little integrity tips. I'll go first while you kind of formulate your departing message. So what I would say to the guys listening to this and the partners listening to this in terms of helping kind of craft a great kind of recovery place to feel safe. Listen, I think we zoom way too far into the sexual things and behaviors. And I think the key to integrity is actually almost taking a step back and then asking, why would I do this? You and I were talking before we started recording. To me, I have an integrity in tons of areas of my life. Unfortunately, integrity isn't all or none. You either are a man of integrity or you are not. I always tell everybody, if you're going to assassinate a family member, if the little marble hit 0 or 00 on the roulette wheel, you would not play the roulette game, even though the odds are lower. You just wouldn't play because it's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. It's the same with integrity, right? If you can cheat, then your wife probably wouldn't have married you. So, hey, it's a really low likelihood that I'm going to cheat, but I could. She probably would move on and start dating a different guy. So that it's integrity isn't all or nothing. You either have it and you're a safe person to be with, or you don't, and you're a cautionary person to be with. But my point of all this is I have integrity in tons of areas of my life. Where I don't And where I compromise it, Crystal, is when it comes to getting attention, validation, being celebrated, somebody telling me how great I am, somebody telling someone else how great I am. Again, winning an award, being called upon for my expertise. That is an area where I will compromise my integrity to get that thing. So the reason I want to bring that up for both the partners and compulsive men listening to this is that's how this works, you guys. I wouldn't violate it in any other way. I never had an affair because I never wanted another relationship because that felt like cheating. Irony, right? But there's all these areas that I was so satisfied in my life. And then there were some where my trauma is, because I know a lot of guys hear this and like, oh, I had a perfect childhood. I wasn't traumatized. I had a perfect childhood and wasn't traumatized. I could say the same thing, but that's not true because I was left. I wasn't honored and celebrated for being me. I was told to go accomplish these things. And then when I did, I would be celebrated. And so that left me with this very unseen feeling. And so I was willing to compromise my integrity, break the law. Violate my wife, there was really no limit to which I was willing to go to get the things in that area. So I hope that made sense for everybody listening. What I'm saying is that to me is recovery, is you go to that vertical and you ask yourself, man, I'm so willing to compromise all of my morals and values for that vertical. Yes, that's the that vertical is one of, and you probably have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how recovery works. That's how integrity and intentional living works, is in this area, I am so desperate to get this thing that I'm willing to go to crazy lengths to get it. So that's my tips. That's what I'm going to leave with everybody is to get into good recovery, find out what you're getting from those acting out behaviors, and then ask yourself, oh my gosh, like I'm so willing to sell out to get that thing. That's your work. That's your trauma. That's the area you need to be a little bit more intentional with, because you're clearly just so desperate in that area that all of your rational thinking just goes completely out the window. And you say, oh, wow, I can go get this attention. I'm going to go get that at any cost. And that's to me, that's what I tell all men is, what are you willing to compromise everything and anything for? Go into that category, and that's your recovery work, because there's something there probably that predates age 10 that led you to believe that it was worth it. Because I guess that's my take home is, you guys, it must have been worth it in theory. In that crazy addictive compulsive moment, it was worth it. So you have to ask yourself, wow, worth lying to my wife in the most egregious way possible that could end the marriage. Yeah, that should, if there's a check engine light, that's the check engine light right there. That's pointing right to where you need to go. So if you and your group and your therapist are not working on that, get on it. So Crystal, how about you? What would you say to these men if you give them one tip for rebuilding integrity?
Well, before I give my one tip, I just want to say this. What you said there, I think, was so significant, because when they're looking at, what are you talking about? I didn't have any trauma in childhood. Your parents may have loved you. It's not against your parents, but you may have not been allowed to develop into yourself and not be celebrated. And so you're right, Roland, you're always looking for that. See me, hear me, make me feel good, help me to know that I'm important. That's the trauma that can come from even the best of families when you're not parented well. And so, but the one thing I would say about integrity as relieving is I remind people all the time that part of being a person of integrity isn't that you're perfect and you never do wrong. Yeah. It's when you do wrong, you take responsibility and you understand the impact it's had, and you make a plan not to do it again. That's also integrity. It's not perfection.
Absolutely. It's ownership. Yes. Right. No betrayed. I've never heard a betrayed partner say you can't make mistakes ever again. I've never heard that. I've heard, I want to be in a marriage where when we do make them, we're honest with each other and we develop a plan to make them happen less in the future. I know it feels like they're demanding perfection, and they're not. They are not. When you violate that and you own it, people violate their integrity by accident all the time. And I think we all know that that's the thing. Now, will you get a more exaggerated response from your wife given the past? Yeah, probably, because she's going to correlate it with, oh crap, you're going to go do that stuff to me again. So you have to, our work is to not take it personally when she has a response to your slip, relapse, whatever the thing is. But that's what she's asking. It's interesting. As long as you can make it past the phase. I know we're all terrified, to be honest. Crystal, I don't have a single example in the history of me running these groups where a guy was honest and it resulted in a divorce. The only time that it did was when there was a long history of relapsing that was not disclosed, and that was dropped on her because that was another disclosure. Okay, that can split the marriage. But if you get right on it in whatever your agreement is, 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever your agreement is with your wife, they are pissed and they want to leave you, but the honesty is what they wanted. So I so agree with what you said. It's ownership. Hey, honey, I have something I need to tell you. But here's what I was also say too, is I think the egregious nature of the acting out from a man who's ferociously trying to defend his integrity is also a lot less. So I think what you have to disclose and admit to tends to be smaller when you're fighting day in and day out in your integrity, and you have a recovery group. I'm a huge believer in groups to help you. Hey guys, my integrity is this. I had a guy the other day. He owned up to integrity. He said he exaggerated, but he reported to the group and it was like, hey, guys, I don't know why I did this. I exaggerated today. That's what Crystal and I are talking about. It's this ferocious ownership of, man, I have this compulsion to enhance my self-worth and brag and embellish things. And I don't like that about myself. And it's that distance between why do I do that? And then you and your integrity over here. It's that gap that I believe drives good recovery. It's when you don't tell your recovery group and you don't tell your wife that those two become fused. And now that's where that shame and that I need to hide this now from my recovery group. I always hate that. It's like, oh my gosh, no, you don't. The whole point of the recovery group is that you don't have to hide anything from them. So lastly, Crystal, where do we find your book? What's it called? Where do we buy it? And then also, can you tell the listeners, where are you licensed and how can people work with you?
I'm licensed in Virginia and Florida, and you can go to my website. It's just my name, crystalhollenbeck.com. And Florida is finally doing a counseling compact. So hopefully next year it's going to open up to multiple states. But I'm only licensed in those 2 states. Although I am a coach, everything falls under my therapy license. But thank you. You can get my book on Amazon. The audiobook is coming very soon, but the paperback and the Kindle is available. And it is Betrayal Trauma Anger. You're not crazy. You're angry, and you should be. How to process complex anger while healing from the impact of sexual betrayal.
Yes, and you should be. When I saw that, I loved it because it is so true. You are pissed and you should be, and it's okay. And there's a way to move beyond this. And guys, I would highly recommend reading it. I think of the most beneficial books I have read through this were all betrayed partner books, just to try and gain an appreciation of what it was that we did. I think it's very hard to be empathetic when you don't at least attempt to understand concepts like foreboding joy and these different things that are going to, catch the lame person off guard. And so I think by reading these books and seeing, oh, she's withdrawing after our closeness. Yeah, I remember reading that in the book. Whereas if you don't read the book, then when she withdraws after the period of closeness, you might turn into a fight or accuse her of something. Or so yes, read the book, stay ahead of this, try to understand. I understand she's just going through one of those phases, and it helps you not take it personally. That's what I found with these books. Is before I read them, I took everything so personally. Reading all of these books and really gaining an appreciation helped me understand that it's just her experience and not necessarily always about me. But Crystal, this is so wonderful. Thank you for your time again. I loved this so much. You're always so generous sharing everything with people. So I appreciate you coming back on the show.
Oh, Roland, I've loved talking to you today, and thank you for all you're doing to help high achievers.
Thank you, Crystal.